Welcome to Walking with Christ. This is an expository-style devotional series where we go verse by verse and chapter by chapter through a book of the Bible. My name's Jeremy, and I really appreciate you joining me today. We are studying the book of Colossians right now, and we'll be picking up in chapter 3, verse 22, reading through chapter 4, verse 1. We'll be reading from the ESV, and again that's starting in Colossians 3, verse 22. The Apostle Paul wrote there, "Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people-pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Masters, treat your bondservants justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven." Closing out Colossians 3, the Apostle Paul gave clear and concise instructions for Christian husbands, wives, and children. He now moves into proper behavior in the working environment. Now, as we begin, it's worth noting that bondservant here is more precisely translated as slave, and therefore it's important to consider the cultural context of this passage. Slavery was extremely common when Paul wrote this letter. In fact, it's estimated that as much as 30% of the population in major Roman cities, like Colossae, was in slavery. And this also means that there were a good number of slave owners or masters. So Paul's instructions here impacted a good portion of the local church. In today's society, our earthly master might be considered our manager, our boss, or anyone who has authority over us in the workplace. Paul tells slaves, or workers like you and me, to obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people-pleasers, but with sincerity of heart. As with the instructions to husbands, wives, and children, we find this is a shorter version of what Paul expounded more deeply upon in his letter to the Ephesians. In that passage, Paul explained how we are to behave as though we are slaves of Christ, and to serve those above us with sincerity and a good attitude, because that is ultimately God's will for us. Reference Ephesians 6, verses 5 to 9. Admittedly, sometimes it takes a lot of humility and fortitude to obey a boss with sincerity of heart, especially when he's difficult, prideful, or ignorant. But that is probably why Paul immediately followed this with, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward." You see, as Christians, we are not just working for the man. We are working for the Lord. And when we remember this, it makes it easier for us to humbly obey those who are over us in the workplace and to do our work heartily, because God is watching, and it is God who rewards us. Reference Ephesians 6, verse 8. And this is a call to do things for the right reasons. We should not be working only to get noticed or to get promoted. Lots of people do that, and these are the people pleasers that Paul says we must not be. Instead, we do our work heartily because we are serving the Lord Christ. Serve with all your heart because it's the right thing to do, and let God take care of getting you promoted. And as for managers and bosses, well, Paul says, "Masters, treat your bondservants justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven." If the Lord has placed you in a position of authority over others, you are given a greater responsibility and accountability for how you treat those who are subject to you. Ruling over others with harshness, creating an environment of fear, manipulating people, or using your authority for unfair gain, well, that's all a sin, and it's got to be dealt with quickly. As Paul says, remember that you also have a master in heaven, so it's wise to treat others as you want to be treated by God. Reference Matthew 7, verse 12, and Ephesians 6, verse 9. Our lesson today is that each and every one of us has an earthly master of some kind, and that's usually in the form of a boss or a manager. And it's our responsibility to serve them as though we are serving the Lord Himself. Our boss will never live up to Jesus' standard, and frankly, neither will you and I. But if we commit ourselves to work heartily for them as though we are serving the Lord, it will do us well in this life and in the next. And in the same way, just like husbands are to love their wives and be gentle with their children, managers and those in charge are commanded to be just and fair to those that God has entrusted them to oversee. Let's therefore approach each task, whether in the spotlight or unseen, with the joy of serving the Lord, who sees all things, including our heart and our attitude. As we work with sincerity and lead with fairness, our daily labor becomes an offering of worship to the one who rewards us faithfully. Well, again, thank you so much for spending just a few minutes in God's Word with me today. I do hope you were blessed by it. If you enjoyed this devotional, you can find more on our website, walkingwithchrist.org. Until next time, have a very blessed day.